Okay, I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores. And the first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. And if you have, any member has one, I'll remind you of your responsibility to declare. Nothing, then the next items on the agenda are minutes, adoption of minutes. We have three of them, and this first motion has been moved by Councillor Rich and seconded by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau that council adopts the minutes of the council meeting of January the 12th, 2015 as presented. Questions or comments to the motion or minutes? And all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next is the Committee of the Whole minutes of January the 12th, 2015. It's been moved by Councillor Mike Myatt and seconded by Councillor Madison that council note and file the Committee of the Whole minutes of January the 12th, 2015. Questions or comments? All in favor then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Final one is the budget minutes of January the 13th, 2015, and it's been moved by Councillor Grace and seconded by Councillor Dave Myatt that council note and file the budget minutes of January 13th, 2015. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item on the agenda is the report of municipal officers and committees, and it's a report of the striking committee. And it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, seconded by Councillor Rich. The Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the striking committee report dated January the 20th, 2015 as follows. That the following be appointed to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Maureen Crawford, Joyce Johnson, Doug Lyons, Bill McKee, Victoria Serta, Libby Thaw, and Ann Davinsky. Barbara Davinsky. That's why I didn't say it, John. I wasn't sure to pronounce it. Sorry. That the following be appointed to the Airport Committee. Tony Alberts, Bob Kingston, Randy Linton, Kevin Yaroskevich. That the following be appointed to the Emergency Management Program Committee. Ron St. Jakes. That that the following be appointed to the Municipal Heritage Committee. Gabriela DeFrancisco, Mark Janakovic, Joyce Johnson, Audrey Underwood. 5, that the following be appointed to the Planning Advisory Committee, includes Committee of Adjustment and Property Standards, Marcel Legault, Pat O'Connor, G. William Streeter. That the following be appointed to the Saugeen Shores Police Services Board, Deanna Buckland. That the following be appointed to the West Ontario Board, Mark Kramer. Questions or comments? All in favor then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next one is a, I guess is a, this is a notice. Oh, this one. Okay, this is the motion then. So notice was given last minute. So next is motions and notice motions of this new ad hoc committee, read the Centre of Excellence. And it's been moved by Councillor Manaz, seconded by Councillor Grace, whereas the striking committee can designate new ad hoc committees. And whereas the Nuclear Waste Management Organization is providing the municipality with appropriate reserve funds for such use, which could foster community sustainability and economic development initiatives while improving community well-being. And whereas we value being a leader in the energy waste and in particular nuclear waste solution, and whereas there are few regionally based centers of excellence, and whereas this forms an opportunity for Saugeen Shores to diversify its economy, and whereas this provides an opportunity to engage retired citizens with relevant expertise, and whereas this affords residents additional opportunities to serve as volunteers and to showcase our community outside of our major city centre, and whereas there is a value added in a strong debate looking at all sides of a problem, gathering the best minds and the most passionate of advocates all in one space at one time to have a dialogue worthy of the complexity of these issues, and whereas democracy is strengthened with research, be it resolved that the striking committee be tasked to create a terms of reference with some modest goals and objectives in 2015, reforming an ad hoc committee to investigate possibilities that could realize a Centre of Excellence or other such title to be established in Saugeen Shores. Questions or comments? Councillor Grace, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I supported this motion because I believe that the nuclear waste issue is one of our most serious environmental issues, not just in our country, but in the world. And with the Bruce Nuclear Power Development located so close to our municipality, this is something that we should take great concern and interest in. And as the motion says, we do have a tremendous resource of potential volunteer expertise here as well. And I see a center of excellence or something like this as being an opportunity to perhaps be even the genesis of a community college or an education center, perhaps an extension of a university campus. And so I hope that our striking committee will consider this seriously, not necessarily right now, but sometime this year, to support this initiative as a way of allowing our community to be proactive in exploring this issue and taking a leadership role, perhaps not necessarily in our municipality being the end place, but in our region. And I'd like us to explore this more, and that's why I'm supporting this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Minaj.
Just one thing, I'd like to thank everyone for the consideration, and if you're looking for a volunteer to sit on the committee, I so volunteer. Thank you.
Councillor Rich.
No, I just want to start. I just want to start by saying I think it's a great idea, and I'm supportive of the motion. But the question I have is, even if it comes back in exactly the same format that it is right now, would it better be served after the visioning session? So, like, not saying that there's anything wrong with the way it is, but there may be ideas that could help modify the idea of a ad hoc striking committee in the future. Is it possible to table it until after the visioning session, just so that we all maybe have an, do you know what I mean, like an opportunity to talk about it?
Councillor Mayette, Dave Mayette, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of along the same veins as Councillor Rich, I'm seeing that we're going to be having some time together, and we're going to be talking about lots of, not lots of, but we're going to talk about several pointed ad hoc committees that are going to deal with things such as waterfront, perhaps aquatics, and some of the more pressing issues that the town is really passionate about. And I know we had a very passionate speaker here on maybe more than one occasion speaking about the nuclear waste management issues, and I'm just not sure if we're preempting ourselves here by ingraining this topic as one of our ad hoc committees when we're going to be looking at the whole issue of ad hoc committees. So I'm hesitant to move forward on this one at this time.
You want to, Councillor Mike Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just the little bit of research I've done on centers of excellence, I think there's eight centers around the province of Ontario, mostly in urban centers, I believe, with the head office in Toronto. I'm just wondering, the question I have, I'm having a little difficulty supporting the motion this evening to proceed with drafting up terms of reference without knowing maybe a little bit more information. Like I have no idea what one of these things would cost to operate. I understand it's all by volunteers, but I'm not sure about that. I just have some questions about staff commitment, staff time, costing to run a center. So I guess there's probably some merit, but I just question whether it's a little premature to pass this resolution this evening asking to draft up terms of reference when I just don't have quite enough information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's definitely merit in having a centre of excellence around the question of nuclear waste and storage of nuclear waste, and more broadly the question of byproducts from the nuclear industry. I think that's certainly I mean, I think it's absolutely a good idea. But the key thing is, and to remember, is that the NWMO is planning to develop a center of excellence on the storage of nuclear waste as part of its plan. I mean, it's in its plan. That's what it's going to do at the site of its DGR if it gets approved. That's where my stumbling block is. I don't really want to see the town of Saugeen Shores go down the route of developing a center of excellence in a field where there's already work on developing a center of excellence. So I think it might be a little bit premature at this stage to talk about doing that here from council. I also kind of am of the opinion, and this is more sort of speaking more to my philosophical or ideological bent than anything, that things like this are best to come from the industry rather than from government. I think probably the industry would do better at bringing people together. The industry has all the knowledge. The industry also has the resources, and it would be, I think, from my own viewpoint, better if industry led the charge on developing things like this, and they already are via the NWMO. So that's my view on it. I think that it would be worth discussing all of this, I think, and the question of centers of excellence and the very good point that Councillor Grace raised with regard to community colleges and the potential for educational opportunities or greater educational opportunities inside the town of Saugeen Shores as part of a broader economic development strategy for the town of Saugeen Shores, or an approach to economic development in the town of Saugeen Shores. I know saying economic development strategy is a bit of a loaded term and may not meet with a huge amount of support, but I think that inside that kind of context where we could talk about our objectives for the economy and our objectives for the kind of educational opportunities we want to develop for our citizens and how best to go about that, I think we can have that discussion in that context, and it would give more context to something like this, and perhaps allow us to paint more clear terms around it. That the action item at the end of this resolution is very general and doesn't give the striking committee much direction in terms of exactly how this would work or what it would do. I mean, I think we would definitely, from my own perspective as a member of the committee, I would definitely need more input if this were to pass from council, to know what exactly kind of outcomes council was looking for in a committee like this, so as to accurately draft terms of reference around it. So I have a number of concerns with the motion, but I could certainly get behind the concept that's been bandied about discussing ideas like this as part of a visioning session. In fact, one of my own items that I've written for that sort of gets to this with regard to economic development. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Grace, sorry, if you don't mind, I'll go. Vice Deputy Mayor Huber. Sorry about that.
The Deputy Mayor said actually a lot of things that I was interested in throwing into the dialogue as well. There are some interesting ideas about diversifying the economy and engaging citizens and that sort of thing that I'm not as afraid of the terminology economic development as some people are, and I think it's time that we had a conversation about it. What I would appreciate a comment on, though, and I don't know if perhaps Larry is the best, just to be clear to all of us, the comment that's in here that whereas the striking committee can designate new ad hoc committees, I guess I'm a little bit challenged by that, because I thought, maybe we can, but I think it would be fairer for us to, as we begin this term of council, to just realize that new ad hoc committees come from council, not from the striking committee. Is that fair? And I think the procedural bylaw sets out what the striking committee can and can't do and what it should do. But I don't think any member of council should think that it's that committee that designates any new ad hoc committee. It's going to come from this table. But I see some merit in the ideas of diversifying the economy, and I used to work in the university environment, centers of excellence. The university I work at has one actually, or that I used to work at, and there's some good merit to that. So I look forward to the discussion that we'll have. I don't know if, I think it's too early for us to do this tonight.
Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm comfortable deferring this to a larger discussion in the visioning session. The reason I like this, however, is the fact that I think it's important for discussion of this to be sponsored by government and not by the industry, because I'm looking forward to a wider, broader discussion. And I think there's great potential there, and that's why I like this idea. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy for you to call the vote on the motion, and those who vote against it, I'm sure that they'll be asked why individually. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, any further comments? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Defeated? Okay, then we move on to the next motion, which is the Centennial Pool, and I'll read this one. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, second by Councillor Rich, whereas over the last 18 years, Council has approved more than $100,000 in funding for 4 different studies intended to provide a basis for a decision on the future of aquatics in the town of Saugeen Shores. And whereas the last 3 studies were presented to Council on November the 28th, 2011, more than 3 years ago, and whereas the present course of action, presented to Council on September the 9th, 2014, envisions spending $1.478 million on Centennial Pool without ensuring the sustainable operation of that facility into the future. And whereas this course of action has been arrived at largely by default because Council has so far been unable to reach a broader decision on the future of the aquatic facility services in Saugeen Shores, and whereas the present condition of the Centennial Pool makes it desirable and in the interest of good management to attempt to reach a decision on this issue in the short term. Now therefore be it resolved that the municipal staff is hereby directed to recommend a process to review and update the new wave pool studies 1, 2, and 3 and pool conditions assessment report by Walter Feedy, and produce a recommendation on future of aquatics in Saugeen Shores for consideration by Council. And that it is Council's desire that this process should produce a recommendation for consideration no later than August the 1st, 2015. There we go. Comments to this motion? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just right off the hop, I wanted to correct a mistake in the text there. That is my fault. The present course of action was actually presented to Council on September 9th, 2013. So if possible, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like the text going forward to reflect that.
I'll make the change if that's fine.
Yeah, okay, Councillor, I'm sure Councillor Rich and I will accept that. I just make the comment, I really wanted to clarify this to be very clear. There were some questions from members of Council about the resolution and its effect. I just want to be very clear. The intention is not for staff to produce a recommendation on the future of aquatics for Council to consider. The resolution is for staff to recommend a process that would update the studies and that would produce a recommendation in the end. So they would come back to Council in the short term, in the very short term, with a process that would update the studies, produce a recommendation and that recommendation would come by August 1st, 2015. The intention here is to give Council the opportunity to discuss the process, because we noted in December that there was some concern with the idea that Councillor Rich and I put forward in terms of a process, and we understand Council would like input on what that process might look like, and so we took that message, and so what we're offering here is attempting to for staff to initiate a discussion on that process with a recommendation. We can have the input on what that process would look like. Once again, that would happen in the very near term. That would be the envision, and then that process that Council approved would move forward and produce a recommendation for us to consider later in the summer. So I just wanted to be very clear on that so there was no confusion.
Sorry, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be supporting this motion. I think that it's obvious to all of us that there's a lot of passion around the aquatics program, and some 47 or 48 years ago, the people that built the Centennial Pool had a vision for aquatics and the important role that it plays in our community. And I think we're in aquatics now, and we need to serve our constituents properly and make a decision one way or the other, and in a defined process that takes into account all of the information that we've spent considerable amount of money on, and consolidating that and coming up with a recommendation that makes sense that we can all stand behind is the duty, and that's the reason we're all sitting here. So for that reason, I'll be voting in favor of this motion.
Thank you. Just a comment, I know we've kind of struggled about how we're going to go forward with this, and I really appreciate how this motion has developed and came to this table, and I think it's really the right path of where we're going to go. I think that this council or committee and council will make the right decision when they get all of the information, and I think this is the start of that, because we can't make this decision in isolation. We had a great many people here tonight, but there are many things that we need to consider before we can make an informed decision, and I appreciate both the mover and seconder for their patience with us on this particular issue. So, if there's no other comments, all in favor of the motion. Sorry, Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will be supporting this motion. My livelihood is in healthy, active living, and I see it from the grassroots up. I deal with the kids from kindergarten to grade 12, and I play with the adults up to great ages. Obesity is a huge factor in Grey and Bruce County, not only that, but Ontario and the world. I'm hoping that when the decision comes back, that, as was stated earlier, that we come up with a regional recreation facility. There's not many people that go around to as many facilities as I do in the different sports that I play and help with. You look at Kincard and what they've done to the Davidson Center, Godrich, Wingham, the Dan Snyder Center in Elmira is just a fantastic place. We need something that's a hub for this community that will take into consideration all the different groups, from Special Olympics up to the 80-year-old swimmer and walker. So hopefully the committee that comes up with the recommendations, and if you're looking for people to be on that committee, I'd gladly put my name forward. We have something to do here, and it's going to be great for the town. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is really more around timing, and I'm just wondering about the 6-month to August 1st, and it's been a long process to get to this stage, and I'm sure whatever we come up with by August 1st is going to be a solid recommendation. We move on with the decision, but I just threw you to the CEO, Larry. I'm just wondering, is this thing doable? Maybe by June 1st, speeding up the process a little bit. I know we waited this long, but do we need the full? I guess the question is, do we need the full 6 months?
I think staff needs some dialogue as to what steps this process will take, and a lot depends on whether council supports the draft process we present to you in fairly short order, and you will have some discretion as to whether you want to speed it up or slow it down at that point.
Just to follow up then, I'm wondering about the motion to August 1st, if this report will come back in the short term. We're thinking February, March, the first report. Is that realistic in the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks? Thank you, Mr. I have nothing else. But just to finish up that question, though, I'm just wondering if the motion, rather than being specific with August 1st, could we entertain the thought around leaving that no later than August 1st, but leaving the door open to have that report back sooner than later?
Address that, and I think that certainly is a tentative here, Mike. I mean, will be the task, or staff will be tasked to bring back some type of a discussion point so we can decide on that, and I'm reasonably certain then it'll be up to us. Then it'll be up to this committee here to see whether we can make that time or not. Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So exactly what are we asking staff to do, because I feel like staff has done everything that they've been asked to do year over year and bring back the information, and we are the guilty ones at the council table that haven't directed staff and said, don't give us another report on refurbishing the existing one. We want a report on what will it take and where should it be located for a new one. So I just heard council tell me that it's too loose, it's not specific enough, and yet here we are with another motion not 5 minutes later that is dumping on our staff and expecting them to come up with magic to make us all look good and feel good about a new aquatic facility. I don't think it's fair.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Rich.
I think that, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the idea, Councillor Minaj, is that we'd like to get the ball rolling. I think that we've been stalled right now, and this is starting to get things moving. The idea was actually to take into consideration the comments from the mayor and the comments from different members of council when the last motion came in an effort to make sure that the process, because everyone seemed to be really caught up in the process, how it was going to be, whether or not there's going to be more public consultation, whether or not the previous reports were good enough. And I wanted to help. I'm hopeful that we'll help create a process that everyone can live with, that everyone's happy with, that's going to push the decision forward. And the August 1st, I was working under the premise that August 1st was to have everything done for us to have made our decision well before then.
Thank you. Any further comments? All in favor then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item on the agenda is bylaws then, and the first one is to authorize an agreement with the Chantry Centre, and it's been moved by Councillor Grace and seconded by Councillor Mayette, Dave Mayette, that bylaw 7-2015, being a bylaw to authorize the entering into of a lease agreement with the Chantry Centre Board, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of January 2015. Questions or comments to the motion or bylaw? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you. Just through you to Jane, we just had something with the Southampton Rotary, a lease agreement with them that enables some subleasing. Is the same language in any lease that we're dealing with? That is it setting out the same sort of thing for each group that has the potential to sublease a municipal building when they have the lease with the town?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think how many other buildings that agreements that we have that would provide an opportunity for subleasing. I don't think we have a tremendous amount. These two in particular. Outside of that, I'm struggling right now with if we're in another situation.
And I think it's only those two as well. But my question was really, is the language the same in both documents?
It's extremely similar. This one does not allow them to provide alcohol in their facility. That would be the difference.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Mr. Mayor, just through you to the clerk, if I may ask. Just a question around the last meeting. I did make comment through to the Director of Community Services about the town having the making sure there's approval processes in place for subleasing, and my apologies. I should have been in to look at that agreement to see if that clause was implemented into the agreement. My question is, we made comments a couple weeks ago to have a clause, inserted into the agreement. How do we, ensure from that last meeting that comment actually made it into it? And I guess my apologies, I should have read the agreement before this evening to see if that got inserted. So what's the procedure there?
I can answer that. It has made it in. The language is in there, and I have discussed it with the organization, and they're fully aware, and they will be compliant to ensure me that they will email me, so there's a written documentation if they're going to sublease.
Perfect. Thank you, Jane. Appreciate it.
If there's nothing further then, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item is a bylaw to authorize an agreement with the Southampton Art Society. And it's been moved by Councillor Minaj and seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber that Bylaw 9-2015, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75-2006. Got that one out of order, sorry. Sorry. It's been moved by Councillor Matheson and seconded by Councillor Mike Myatt that Bylaw 8-2015, being a bylaw to authorize a lease agreement with the Southampton Art Society, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of January 2015. Any questions or comments to this motion or bylaw? Then all in favor? That's carried. Sorry. The next one then is a bylaw for rezoning for Susan Curry, and its bylaw has been moved by Councillor Minaj and seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber that Bylaw 9-2015, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 75-2006, being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the town of Saugeen Shores by Susan Curry for lands described as 136 Anglesia Street in the town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of January 2015. Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
This is not specific to the bylaw, but just as a comment, Councillor Mike Myatt and Councillor Grace attended their first planning meeting, and this is one of the agenda items from that meeting, and I just wanted to express that it's a steep learning curve when you sit for your first time on the planning committee, and I just want to congratulate them both for taking some time to do a little research and prep, and I think we're represented well in that committee for the next 2 years.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll confess that I'm not completely versed on the planning advisory rules as well, but just I looked at this and I saw the aerial photograph, and it looks to me as though one of the buildings is going to be situated right on the property line. Is there but I don't see where it was addressed as an encroachment issue.
We'll let a member of the packet address that.
I actually asked that question too, and if you saw the more detailed drawing, you'll see that it's a bit of a jog, which takes into account the required setback for the existing structure. But good eye.
If, and just, you can get that information in the agenda for the Planning Advisory Committee meeting so that the planners will have a planning report that will describe in detail what the request is and then what the recommendation is and all the maps. So, yeah, okay. So you should be able to get what you want there. Okay, fine. Sure, go ahead.
Also, with the support of both Councillor Grace and Mike Myatt, we've put a subtle request. It'll be a little more obvious in for a planning orientation for the entire council, whether it's from Bruce County Planning or from our own development officer. We've suggested that it would be good information for the whole council to get at some point, just a little prep course on planning.
If there's no further questions, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is another bylaw that has to do with authorizing an agreement for prisoner transportation, and it's been moved by Councillor Dave Mayette and seconded by Councillor Grace, that bylaw 10-2015, being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services for court security prisoner transportation services, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of January 2015. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for the Treasurer with regard to the financial impact listed in the information report. Just clarify for us, Kate, that the money that's indicated there that is suggested for 2015 and 2016 is provisional and will only flow if we do incur prisoner transportation costs. And in fact, we have not incurred the entire fee up in the last couple of years. At least that's my understanding. Could you clarify that for us?
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. The amounts that they're providing here, as you said, are provisional. They're estimated based on historical cost info, and there is quite a lag, a 2 or 3 year lag that they use to estimate what our costs are. However, our annual financial reports are not due until April. So since the closure of the jail in Walkerton, our prisoner transportation costs have not been significant. And in the event that our costs are less than the funding that they're proposing here, some will be clawed back. However, there is no budgeted revenue for these amounts, so if there is any clawed back funds, it will not have a negative impact on our bottom line.
Thank you. Further questions? All in favor then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item is a bylaw to amend bylaw appoint members to the Planning Advisory Committee, and it's been moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber and seconded by Councillor Minaj that Bylaw 11-2015, being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 5-2015 and to provide for the appointment of public members to the Planning Advisory Committee, Property Standards Committee, and Committee of Adjustment, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of January 2015. Questions or comments? All in favor then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next item is bylaw for the acquisition of land acquisition at 70 Beach Road, and it's been moved by Councillor Minaj, seconded by Councillor Grace. The bylaw 12-2015, being a bylaw to authorize the acquisition of land, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of January 2015. Any questions or comments to this bylaw? Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I read this, I saw there was no talk of any money exchanging. This is a land transfer with pro bono, so to speak.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Ready to vote now? All in favor then. Let's have the vote. Opposed, if any. That's carried. The next item then is appoint a building inspector. And it's been moved by Councillor Matheson and seconded by Councillor Mike Myatt that Bylaw 13-2015, being a bylaw to appoint a senior building plumbing inspector for the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed the 26th day of January 2015. Questions or comments? All in favor? Very good. And I guess the last bylaw then has been moved by Councillor Myatt and seconded by Councillor Madison that Bylaw 14-2015, being a bylaw to impose a fee for a sewer connection charge and a water connection charge on the owner or occupants of lands who derive or will or may derive a benefit from the installation or upgrading of sanitary sewer mains and or water mains on Macbeth Lane, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of January 2015. Questions or comments to the bylaw or motion? Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a recent news item where there were people who were reimbursed money because they decided not to hook up to sewers and water that were provided on their street, whereas previously it was a mandatory service. Is that the case with these people, or are they voluntarily going to be making the connections?
They all connected. All connected has typically been our policy where we extend it. Everyone connects. We give them 9 months. And perhaps maybe you can, if you got a comment.
It's actually a bylaw that requires people
to. I think it was recently overturned, though. There was an item in the news that I heard.
I think you're talking about a different municipality.
Different municipality, yes.
All in favor of this then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And the final one, this has been moved by Councillor Rich and seconded by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, that Bylaw 15-2015, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 26th day of January 2015. All in favor? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Dave Mayette and seconded by Councillor Grace that this regular council meeting of January 26, 2015 hereby adjourned at 10:24 p.m. All in favor? We're adjourned.